Hello and welcome to the Sober Bliss podcast with me, Gail, and my amazing guest. I finally quit drinking for good in March of 2018, and one of the things that helped me was connecting with people on the same journey as me, hearing their stories and finding inspiration. No matter where you are on your journey to sobriety, I hope you enjoy listening to these stories and hope they bring you inspiration, joy and light so you can find your own sober bliss. Hi everyone and welcome to another edition of Sober Bliss Meets with me, Gail from Sober Bliss. And today I'm really excited because I'm joined by one of my lovely clients, Kate. And Kate is, I'm not sure, how many months alcohol free are you now, Kate?
6 months now.
6 months, yay, well done. Oh, that's so awesome. So yeah, welcome, Kate. And we started working together back in July, didn't we? So just before we kind of get into like where you were then and what the journey's been like, can you just tell us how you're feeling now at 6 months alcohol free?
Well, thank you, Gail, for having me on. It's a real scary privilege to be asked and invited to speak to you. So 6 months on, I feel free is probably the word that I would use. I feel like I have space in my head. I feel like the endless conversation, which I'm sure we'll talk about in the next 20 minutes or so, about the endless ruminations about drinking. Should I drink? Can I drink? How much will I drink? All of that has just stopped, and my head is just a peaceful place to be. I went through the pink cloud phase at around 40 days, which was lovely. It's worth giving up just to go through that. You feel like you're invincible. Sadly, it doesn't last forever. But the sort of peace and clarity that comes with that does last forever. So I think probably like 3 words to sum up how I feel. I feel free. I feel proud of my achievement. And I feel like I have clarity in my life and the control is back with me, rather than having given it to something else.
Yeah. And that's no small thing at all,
no,
really, is it? Not at all. Oh, well done. I'm so happy for
Thank you so much.
And I've really enjoyed working with you. Obviously not the whole 6 months, but we were together for 3 months. And it was such a joy to see you grow and get more confident and, like you say, leave all of that behind and find the peace and the clarity. So would you mind sharing with us like kind of where you were when you pressed the button and booked a call to chat to me?
Yeah, of course. Well, if you'll forgive me for going back a little bit further than that, just to kind of give some context. So I'm 44 and I work in a professional job where I think my stress at work is pretty high. I might as well say I'm an anaesthetist. And I think one of the things you learn at medical school is how to drink. It's not on the official curriculum, but it is taught every day after lectures. And so I think doctors, most people appreciate they have a very high stress working environment, and working in the operating theatre is high stress. And so one of the ways that we decompress is that we play hard and we work hard. And I think, all through my 20s and 30s, it was just a normal way of life. And I probably should caveat this by saying that I don't ever think that I had a problem with drinking in the sense that it was interfering with my work. I would never, ever drink before a day at work. But come the weekend, when I knew that I didn't have an on-call or any work to do, I would always end up drinking more than I wanted. And that might not actually have been that much when I compared it to what my friends were drinking. And when I started to sort of have these internal conversations about whether I was drinking more than I wanted to, people would always reassure me that, oh, you've got nothing to worry about. You just drink normally. I never disgraced myself. I never behaved badly. I didn't upset people or insult people. In fact, I was a really happy drunk. I was always telling people how much I loved them and how happy I was to have them in my lives. And so I was quite fun to have around in the party spirit. And I never associated drinking with depression or, people talk about numbing emotions. It was never that for me. It was always a celebration and something that was fun and positive. But I think in my early 30s, something changed really. And I found that my drinking behaviors were no longer making me happy. I would go out to have a few drinks and always end up drinking more than I wanted to. And then the consequences of that, when I woke up the next morning as I got older and less able to sort of throw off the hangover like you can in your 20s, is that I just felt rotten in the daytime. And then I think that just set up this cycle of cognitive dissonance, really. I wanted all the fun of the booze the night before, but I didn't want to deal with the hangover the next day. And I think, as you probably learned about me over the last 6 months, I'm quite a reflective person and I have quite high standards for myself. And I do a lot of stuff outside of work, like cycling and triathlon and that. And I was finding that it was interfering with all the things I wanted to achieve. And so this sort of question started to come up in my head in my early 30s about, do I really want to be drinking this much? And then I decided, probably at around 35, that I didn't, that I wanted to start taking control. And that was really interesting because at the point when I decided, right, you're going to go out, you're only going to have 2 glasses of wine this evening and then that's it. Suddenly I was finding that I wasn't really able to stop at the 2 glasses of wine. Once I'd had a couple of glasses, I was like, woohoo, bring the party on, let's keep drinking. And I no longer cared that I'd set these rules for myself. And then, as I'm sure many listeners will understand, because I've read in a lot of sober lit books since, that lots of people have the same internal dissonance. They want to set these limits and then they find that they can't. And then they wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning with a terrible hangovers, those 3 a.m. terrors, thinking, oh God, I've done it again. Why? I've set myself these limits. Why is every other aspect of my life totally controllable, but this seems to be uncontrollable? And then I think over the next 5 years or so, I just ended up in this spiral, well, not spiral, this circle really of setting limits, breaking them, setting them, breaking them, and then just ending up feeling really bad about myself for not being able to control this one thing. And I think it just grew in importance for me over the years. And so to fast forward a little bit, about 6 years ago, I decided, right, I'm going to take a bit of a break from drinking. And I reached out for the first time to a coach online who said to me, yes, you have to give up drinking for 3 months. I was like, sorry, no, that's not what I was asking for at all. What I wanted is for you to give me a few handy hints and tips so that when I go to the bar, I can stop at 2 glasses. And it's funny, I look back now, sort of 6, 7 years later, and she was absolutely right, of course, but I wasn't ready to hear that.
Yeah.
So I completely ignored her. I carried on in my own merry way. And then when I turned 40, I decided that I would take a year off from drinking. And I dressed it up in all sorts of self-delusional things about checking in with myself and making sure I could socialize without drinking. And I didn't have any kind of problem. It was just a social experiment. And this is what I told to all my friends, who all thought I was crazy for giving up for a year. But I did do a year, and it was a revelation. At the beginning of that year, I read the book, which I didn't realize at the time had only just been released by Annie Grace, This Naked Mind. And it was like stepping outside of the matrix, is the best way I can describe it.
Yeah.
Suddenly I felt like I could see alcohol, I suppose, without the sort of rose-colored glasses that we're all brought up. It's a celebration, it's a commiseration, it's an everything, it's a crutch for everything. And that year was just brilliant. And there was nothing negative. There was absolutely nothing negative, and so many positive things. But of course, when I turned 41, I was like, right, that's it, I've cracked it. Now I know how to moderate. I don't need alcohol. I can just have a nice time without it. So when I have the occasional gin and tonic glass of wine, it will be lovely. So about a year and a month after my 40th, I had my first drink. And for about, I would say 18 months, it was all fine. But then fast forward, and 18 months later, I was back in exactly the same position, drinking more than I wanted to, waking up feeling rotten the next day. And I just felt out of control, I guess. So fast forward to your question. I'm sorry it's taken me so long to get to the answer. 6 months ago, so between then and now, I've probably taken several periods of time off drinking. 3 months here, a phase with 1 year no beer, where I did a 90-day challenge. And I'm always happier when I'm not drinking. And I was on holiday for 2 weeks before I got in touch with you. And I was in a beautiful part of the world. It was our first holiday after COVID. We'd had a very bad COVID time, obviously being an anaesthetist, you're in the intensive care unit, working with patients who are very sick with the disease. And it was our first break after that.
Yeah.
And I kind of let my hair down and just thought, right, just enjoy yourself. And you know, Gail, every morning on that 2-week lovely holiday, I woke up hungover. And I just had this revelation. I was like, Kate, what are you doing? Do you want to be enjoying all the water sports activities you could be doing? We've gone to kite surf and to scuba dive. And I did all the things like I always do, but I did them feeling sick, gastritic, in a bad mood, wishing that I could just be in bed, or waiting till 4 o'clock to come so that it was acceptable to drink for a bit of hair of the dog again. And I just had this moment where I thought to myself, you just have 3 choices in your life. And one, you can continue this endless battle to moderate, and you can continue for the rest of your life, it would seem to me, feeling like you're failing every day at what you're doing. This endless conversation about drinking in your head that just goes round and around and around and never ends. So that was option 1, just continue to fail. Option 2 was just to surrender and think, okay, excuse my French, I'm going to drink as much as I want, when I want, however I want. Well, that isn't an option for the job I do, because I have to be fully present. And the other thing is, I'm planning to take a bit of a career break next year. And I was worried that without the protection of my strict rules around my work, that removing those and being unemployed for a 6-month period, then maybe I would be allowed to drink every day if I wanted to. And that terrified me, because I don't want that life. And then the third option, suddenly seemed clear. Well, the third option is you could just stop drinking and give yourself that peace and clarity. And so I came back from that holiday, and the first thing I did when I got home was Google you, or hit reply to your email, because I think in one of my many goes round the merry-go-round, I had obviously looked at your website through Googling sober coaches, and I was on your mailing list and receiving your emails. And I just got back and thought, Kate, you've been around this dance so many times, and whatever it is hasn't stuck. So you need to do something different. And I think I'm one of those people, I don't often ask for help. And I thought you really need to ask for help, because there's no shame in that at all.
No, there's not at all.
And so I pressed go and I contacted you, and you emailed me back within a day. And then we set up a call for the following week. And the rest is history. Sorry, it was a really long answer to your question. Sorry.
No, but I think a really important answer, because I'm sure so many people listening to that can relate to the turmoil in our heads, really. And, you know, we don't have to have like a rock bottom moment. We don't have to have anything bad to happen. It's just, we have to kind of reach the point where we think, well, I don't want this taken up so much space in my head anymore. And I think the main thing with, you know, this journey is it making you unhappy? If so, would I be happier without it? Forget the labels, forget the stigma, forget, you know, other people, which I'm sure we'll talk about that as well. But at the end of the day, if it's making you unhappy, and if it's making you feel like you're failing at life, like you said, then that's the most important thing to consider. Not, you know, my friend's drinking more than me, or they're drinking less than me, or am I an alcoholic, and all of those things. You know, so
I think, and thank you. I think that's so true, that you waste so much time worrying about the labels that you can apply to yourself, or rather I did. You know, I can only speak from my own experience, but the number of times that I Googled, am I an alcoholic? And I'd answer all those questions that the internet throws up at you. And the answer was no. And then I'm like, oh, well, that's okay. I'm not an alcoholic, so I can carry on exactly as I am.
Yeah.
And what I realized is that it's just completely the wrong question. It doesn't matter what label or how much you drink compared to other people. What matters is, you know, is alcohol interfering with the life I want to live? And the answer was just a resounding yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was a bit of a light bulb moment. Like, stop asking that stupid question, because it's just keeping you stuck where you are, and where you are is not a happy place. So ask a different question. Yes, I could live a better life than this. And I think the other thing that I found really fascinating, comparing 4 years ago when I took that year off drinking compared to now, is actually how much more resource there is out there. There were a couple of sober blogs back then, and Annie Grace was obviously starting her business. And I was just lucky that I happened to come across her book. But coming back to it 4 years later, there's so much stuff now, books written by people, you know, just like me. Like, I know we've talked about the Sober Diaries by Claire Pooley. I thought that book was brilliant. And I read a book called Mrs. B is Going Without by Lotta Dan. And as I read it, I thought, well, I don't have to write a book now, because these women are describing exactly what I am going through. And that I found really helpful to, you know, because as you just said, you don't need to hit a rock bottom. You don't need to be, you know, drunk in a police cell or crashing your car 4 times a week. And the first time round, it seemed that the stories that I could access were of people whose lives had just exploded because of their drinking. And I was like, well, I don't relate to that whole kind of disaster AA model, but I do relate to the kind of like woman who's holding it together. She's got a full-time job and a family and all those things. And this drinking is kind of like on the sidelines. So again, you know, the podcasts and the books that are available now just have been incredibly useful, I think.
Yeah, they are. Not in terms of kind of offering help and support, which they are amazing at, but also inspiration as well. And that kind of knowledge that actually I'm not alone. There are the people going through it and who have gone through it. So if, for me, because I've read the Sober Diaries as well, like when I first quit, I think I binged read it in 2 days or something. And it was like, gosh, you know, well, if this person can do it, then surely I can do it as well.
Yeah, that's right. And also, I think when I contacted you, I was just, I think the best way to say it was just in despair. I was hopeless, and I'd just been round and around and around the same track so many times. And then to realize that you're not mad, because you feel mad inside your own head, because you feel this way about drinking and how your drinking behavior is, but other people are telling you that you're normal. You've got nothing to worry about. Don't worry. And like my wonderful, wonderful husband, who is the luckiest man in the world, because he's one of those really rare people, I think, who can have a beer and be like, oh, that was so lovely, I don't need any more beer. And he always used to say to me, you know, you never misbehave or whatever. I don't know why you worry so much about it. Or he would say, just have one. Why don't you just have one? Because you enjoy it. I'm like, oh my God, you don't understand it. I would love just to have one. And still, you know, if I'm completely honest, if I could have my wish, what I wish is I could drink like he drinks. But what I finally realized over the last 7 years of rumination is I can't. So stop wishing that you could have this thing, because it's not for you. Accept where you are and what you've got, and then make a decision based on the reality of who I am. And the reality of who I am is I don't want one drink. I want one bottle of drink. So, and not one small bottle of Corona beer like he likes. So the sort of freedom of realizing that. And again, lots of people I've read have talked about moderation just being an impossible goal. I'm sure there must be people out there who do achieve it, like the guy who runs 1 Year No Beer. He drinks moderately and occasionally, but it doesn't work for me. And it's much more peaceful in my head just to make the decision, and the decision is no. And then it's one choice, as you've said to me before. You make the decision and then you stick with it, and then it's easy, because it's not an endless stream of 100 decisions a day. It's just one.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's what kind of got me through, and what made it, I think, a lot easier than it could have been was just saying to myself, okay, Gail, you're not drinking, So what are you going to do instead?
Yes,
and
right.
that was much easier to kind of cope with, as opposed to, well, you know, the whole moderation nightmare, really, which I think it is a nightmare.
I think it's a nightmare. I remember us having a conversation about 2 months in, and I'd had a particularly busy week, and you know, your normal response is to come home and open a bottle of wine, says Kate, who just said that she never used it to numb feelings. I suppose maybe that wasn't entirely true. And but I remember talking to you and saying, I literally feel like I've shut a monster in the cupboard. And if I open that crack a little, the arms of that monster are going to come out, because it's not just one drink. And I think for me, I think you told me this, to play it forward, or to you know, play the tape forward. Yes, that one drink might be wonderful, but that one drink is going to lead to the second drink, and then most likely to the fourth and the fifth and the sixth drink. And those drinks are not wonderful. And so actually, to be realistic, and I think in The Unexpected Joy of Being Sober, Catherine Gray talks about, if you want to maintain your sobriety, then you have to unpick the fantasy that you've got in your head and destroy that fantasy. Because, you know, we all dream of sipping Magners on a sunny day surrounded by friends in a pub beer garden. Well, yeah, that might be the first Magners of the day that you drink, but that's not the only one you're going to have. So by the seventh, when you're crawling around on the floor and your hair's all over the place and you're being sick in the toilet, it's not quite so romantic and dapple sunshine. So I found that really, really useful, just to not stop at thinking about the one drink, but play forward to the fifth drink. Yeah, so that's helpful. But for me, moderation is just a losing game, really.
Yeah, it is. It is. And actually, I think it's important to say that, you know, it's not drink number 3 or 4 or 7 which kind of does the damage or does us harm. It's drink number 1, because that obviously leads on to the others. So if you can, and I suppose it's just thinking about that drink number 1, you know, if the thought of never drinking again is too much for you, then I'm sure if you think, okay, well, if I just don't have this drink, then I'll feel differently and then I'll feel better, because it is true. You know what it's like when you have a craving. They only last a little while and you feel completely different after you've got through it, as you know, when they started. So I suppose it's just thinking about the short term in the beginning, because that short term will affect the longer term. So playing the movie forward, that is such a brilliant technique. But don't worry about drink 7, 8 or 10. Just focus on drink 1
and not having it.
And not having it. Yeah.
And I think what I really hang on to now, I've found over the last 6 months, is the first time you do anything is the hardest time. So I remember texting you when I went on holiday, and we were on a beach and we were kite surfing, and the normal thing is you finish your day's kite surfing, you pack up your kit, and then you sit and have a beer on the beach. And I was having had a fairly easy ride, actually, I think, through the first 4 months. I was shocked at how hard that was. And also made difficult because we were in quite a remote place and there was no alternative. You know, there was no alcohol-free beer or fancy kombucha or any other such stuff. It was like water or beer. That was the choice. And it was quite funny because the waitress at the cafe, the beach cafe, she kept saying to me, "Would you like a beer?" And in the end, I said, "No, I don't drink." And that's the first time those words had come out of my mouth, which was also quite a revelation. And she looked at me and she said, "But why not?" And I hadn't expected her to ask that question. And I said, "It makes me really sick." And she just put her hand on my arm and said, "I'm so sorry." I was like, "Thank you for your sympathy. I'll have another water." But the point of the thing is that by the 4th day, the new habits had been formed, and I was no longer, thinking about the beer. And back to that whole thing about making a decision, because I had made a decision that I was not going to drink anymore. It wasn't like I was having a craving, but it wasn't like I ever worried that I was going to give way to that craving. It was just this annoying mosquito that kept buzzing around me, and I was like, would it just go away, because I'm not going to have a drink. Yeah, one of my friends said to me years ago, she was doing a master's in business, and she said that they'd had this lecture about psychology of decision making. And she's a doctor as well. And, sort of obsessed with the Latin roots of words. She said that a decision, it comes from the Latin, from de, to remove, and scission, to excise. So to excise yourself from the thing. And she described this thing about being at a crossroads of a decision making point. And so you cut away the alternative routes. And I found that really useful too in stopping drinking. Like, I have decided to stop drinking. I've cut away the drinking life that I had, and now I'm on this path to not drink. I don't know why I found that really useful, but again, just a point at which you're not going to keep looking at this. I'm not going to keep questioning it. I'm just going to accept that that's been made. So yeah. So the first time is always the hardest, and things have got easier each time that you come across the same situation, be it socializing or a holiday, finishing a week at work. I guess you set up new habits, don't you?
Yeah, you do. And it takes time and takes practice. But you're right, as long as you have it kind of clear in your head that this is the path that I'm going down, then it does make learning about all the new things and experimenting with different habits and routines a lot easier. So just going back to like when we had that first conversation, at that point, had you decided that this is it, I'm not drinking anymore and I need help? Or did that decision come after we'd kind of chatted?
No, I had realised that out of my three options, to continue to moderate and fail, to give up and just drink as much as I wanted, or to stop, it had to be option 3. So when we spoke for the first time, I hadn't had anything to drink for a week. And
that's right, yeah.
I was certain that I did not want to drink again. And I think what I was hoping that you would give me, which you did, was kind of a safe space to be completely honest about how I was feeling. Because as I say, every time I turned to friends, well, no, that's not fair on them actually. I was so mired in guilt and shame about this perceived failing on my part that I couldn't be honest with people about it.
Yeah.
And so I would kind of touch around the outsides of it with my friends, and they would reassure me that everything was fine, because generally that's what friends do. And, in terms of being supportive towards you. And I think because all of the dissonance was going on in my head, I probably never really gave anyone the opportunity to support me, if I'm honest. Because I'm one of those people, I quite like to appear like I've got it all together. I don't like to be vulnerable. So I recognized that I needed someone with whom I could be completely honest and vulnerable, and also someone whose feelings I didn't have to worry about, because, I don't want to worry my friends or my husband or my parents or anything. I don't want to burden them with the problems that I've got in my head. And so with you, I was just able to talk to someone who got it, who understood, who didn't tell me that I was crazy, and just allowed me to speak honestly and work through what I seemed to feel was crazy in my head, and say, no, this is valid and you can do this. And I was thinking about it today ahead of our talk, and you just kind of walked next to me and held my hand while I was doing it. And honestly, I will forever be grateful for that. I can't say how much it was such a relief just speaking to you for the first time. I just felt safe and held for the first time. That's it's going to make me cry now.
I know, I'm going to cry as well. Oh, okay, thank you. That's so lovely. And yeah, that's what I'm here for.
Yeah, and I think I didn't expect you to be like you were. It's going to sound really weird. I kind of expected you to tell me what to do and be kind of strict and stern. And I remember coming off the phone from you the first time, or from Zoom, and just being really surprised at how gentle you were, and how kind and just listening you were. I don't know what I'd really expected from coaching, but it wasn't what I got, and what I got was so much better. You just created a safe space for me, so thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. My pleasure. And I think it's important for people to understand that, they don't need to be told what to do, because really it's their own journey, like it's your journey. And while, as you so lovelily, is that a word, said,
Now.
that I am there for you, and I do walk beside you and hold your hand and hold you up if you can't hold yourself up. You have to do it yourself in a way that feels good for you. So basically me saying, okay, just do this, and this, and you'll be fine. Because it might not work for you. And you have to figure it out yourself, because at the end of the day, my goal is to look after you, if you like, for that period of time.
Yeah.
And then for you to go off and live your life happily, alcohol free. So you have to do it yourself, and you have to have the space where you can make mistakes, try things out, figure them out, have a rant, have a cry, get it all out, and just, plot your own course, if you like. And that is my aim. And I'm really pleased that you found that for yourself. Thank you.
Yeah, I did. And I think it's so easy, isn't it, to look at other people's lives and think, oh, well, you should do this and you should do that. When we're dealing with other people's problems, I've just finished that the Chimp Paradox, the second book that he wrote, A Path Through the Jungle. And he says the reason that we are so good at sorting other people's problems out is that when we look at them, we're in human mode. So we're in problem solving, thinking, and lacking less emotion. But when we deal with our own problems, we're in chimp mode. And so we have a whole load of emotional reactions that are missing when we look at other people's problems. And I think what I realized is that the first time around the merry-go-round, when I first reached out to a coach, I wasn't ready to hear anything that she had to say. And I just hadn't, I hadn't made the point on the journey, as everyone calls it these days, to be receptive and to be ready to make change. I wanted the change, but I didn't want to make the change. Whereas when I met you, I was like, please help me to make this change. It's got to happen. So I guess, I look at what's been really interesting is I've had a few conversations with people. Now that I don't feel so ashamed, I realize that where I was is normal. Many people are there. And, I know that we've talked about doing this podcast before, and I was very anxious about doing it, partly because of what I do for a job, and because, as I say, I don't like to be vulnerable. I like people to believe I've got my life ticking over and got my shit together. But actually, I think that there are many people like me who feel this way but are really ashamed of it. And one of the reasons that I agreed to do the podcast is in that kind of playing it forward way that you've helped me, and I hope that being honest might help other people. And already talking to friends, a few people have intimated that, I do understand what you feel, because I feel that too. And I think we just don't talk about it in society today. There's like this big secret around alcohol, like it's our friend and it's our celebration. And once you step outside the matrix and you stop seeing it that way, it's shocking how it just pervades everything in our lives. And don't get me wrong, I'm not some sort of zealot in anti-alcohol. I don't mind other people drinking at all if it makes them happy. I have it in the house, it doesn't bother me. My husband still drinks his little beer, as he calls it, on a Saturday with his dinner. But I think it's something that we don't talk about, because we're all in this kind of Emperor's New Clothes secret. Let's not look at it. And I think that's wrong.
I can relate, because that's what kind of kept me stuck as well. I don't think anybody who saw me, well, maybe they did, but they didn't say anything, at the school run in the morning when I felt like absolute just death, would kind of know what I was going through, because it's not something that you chat about.
No, you don't.
Because you're ashamed, and you think, oh gosh, there must be something wrong with me, because other people don't seem to be going through this. That's because we're not talking about it. And I think that's the problem, that we automatically assume that we are the ones with the problem, not the thing that we're drinking is problematic. I'm quite happy to admit that I did have a problem with alcohol. I relied on it for absolutely everything. But now that alcohol is not in my life, I don't have a problem with alcohol. So really, I think that we should see alcohol for what it is, without being, like you said, bit of a zealot and anti-alcohol, but it is a poison. It is toxic. It does turn us into people that we're not and make us do things that we wouldn't necessarily do. And that's on that, not on us.
Not on us. Yeah, I agree. And, you know, it's a real cliched line, but it's the only drug that you have to justify not taking. It's just mental. And that was another thing that really kept me stuck. And we talked a lot about this while you were coaching me, was telling people that I'm not drinking. I was so worried about people's judgment, and I was so worried that people would think I was boring or some kind of like prude or party pooper. And I was also really worried about changing relationships, you know, with friends who, you know, I've had good times with over the years. And, you know, a lot of that has been around alcohol. We've had some hilarious adventures and silly situations. And I was really worried that my relationships would change on a fundamental level with those friends. And that, A, kept me stuck, and B, then kept me silent after I'd given up. It took me quite a long time, actually, to tell certain friends that I had stopped drinking. And again, it's all about your own shame and your own, I suppose, hang-ups, because all of the people that I confided in properly with honesty have all been 100% supportive. They've been so fantastic, and have all of them said, you know, we just want you to be happy, and however you live your life that makes you happy, we're happy for that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been really fascinating. It really has.
It has
and
been a fascinating journey watching you. And I remember right at the beginning, you were worried about this particular friend and what she would say, how she would react, what you would say. And I think you worried about it all the way through. And then when it finally happened, it was exactly like you've just said. She was so delighted for you.
Yeah, she was. And we were going to spend a weekend together. We don't see each other very often because we live a long way apart. And she's my, you know, oldest, bestest friend. And I sent her an email probably about a month before we were due to meet, because I wasn't sure with COVID whether it was all going to be possible at all. So I thought, I'll keep my powder dry until we know it's going to happen. And I was very honest in the email, and she was just wonderful. And we had the best weekend together. We really did. And the thing that I love about not drinking is that you get to live every single minute of your life. This is probably the one biggest revelation for me. I don't have to choose anymore. Do I want to go out for dinner and you know, or go to the pub or whatever? Because I know that will impact my training session the next day. I won't be able to cycle properly. So should I not go and then be able to cycle? Or should I go and pretend that I'm not going to drink as much, and then of course wake up at 3 a.m. with all that, oh, you've done it again. Why did you drink too much? But instead we went out for dinner. We had wonderful meals. She drank, I didn't. We laughed. We got up early in the morning. I went to the gym. We went shopping. We, you know, did sightseeing. We had such a great time, and every minute of that was lived to the full. It was lovely, as opposed to if I'd been drinking, I would have egged her on to drink more. We would have ended up, you know, out till 3 a.m. You know, as it was, we were sat in bed drinking. This sounds really boring, but drinking tea till like 1:30 in the morning. And so it wasn't, you know, but we were laughing, and it was great fun. And then we got to do everything else the next day. And I think that's the other thing I kidded myself on, that all my friends will make me drink more. And you know, the truth is, Gail, probably I was the one making them drink more, and they're probably bloody relieved that I stopped, because now they get to stop too and have tea in bed at 1 o'clock in the morning, rather than Kate dragging them to the next bar to keep the party going. So yeah, I think that whole thing about no longer having to choose what on your list of things you want to get done is the most important, and it was always drinking. But actually just being able to enjoy everything, the food, the conversation, laughing, and then getting up the next day and doing all the things you want to do, it's a revelation for me.
Yeah, it is. And you can do everything. You don't have to choose anymore, or you don't have to like build in recovery time or schedule a special day off work. You can still go out, enjoy yourself, and then still go to work if you want to the next day. You don't have to miss out on anything, because you can't do it all, only if you want to, you know.
Yeah, or not, or just
not.
relax and enjoy. And I think I worried too that socializing would be boring without drinking. And again, that's just not true. You're present, you're engaged, you're there listening to people. Your stories are more funny. Well, I don't know if that's true, but at least you're telling them in a coherent way. You're not just, slurring and rambling. I remember also reading in one of the many books, or maybe it was on a podcast, that people were saying, people worry that they're going to be perceived to be boring once they stop drinking. And they made the point that they were going to this sober gathering in the park. I think it might have been on the Sober Awkward podcast, which I really enjoy. And anyway, they were saying that there was a gathering of people who'd stopped drinking. And as one of the women who does the podcast pointed out, like, how could it possibly be full of boring people? They were so exciting that they had to stop drinking. Like, this is the gathering where you're going to have the best stories, because, people didn't just wake up and think, oh, I'm so boring. I'm contradicting myself saying that you don't have to drink to be exciting, but you know what I mean? It doesn't, You're not like some retiring snowflake because you don't drink.
Quite the opposite.
Have life, and exactly. So all of those, stereotypes and prejudices are just, I think, completely wrong. Wrong.
They are absolutely wrong. And you actually are the least boring person that I've ever met. And in our time together, you were off doing so much. I was just like, wow, this is amazing. All the things that you did, and lots of firsts as well, which we talked about as they were approaching, and you've just kind of sailed through everything, really. I think you're doing like really, 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 really well.
Thank you.
Would you mind sharing with our listeners, Kate, what your kind of impression was about the coaching process as a whole, and how it helped you to get to where you are now?
Yeah, sure. So I think when I got in touch, I had an idea of what the coaching process would be like, and it wasn't anything like that at all. So it was a real surprise to me. And when I called you and we spoke, I think I was in such a dark place, as I've already said. I was full of shame, and I felt like inside my head was just this kind of like dark black cloud of negative emotion. And I expected that you would want to talk about that, like what's brought you to this point, and tell me about your childhood, and what was your terrible rock bottom, which of course I didn't really have one, so I was pretty boring in that respect.
Yeah.
But what really surprised me is that you didn't ask any of those questions. You kind of took it as read that I had obviously reasons to come to you, and you just encouraged me to kind of put them in a box and put them aside, because that wasn't the point of what we were here to do. Which isn't to say that you belittled at all how I was feeling. You kind of just took it as read. Yeah, I accept that you're full of all negative emotions. Now, what are we going to do about it? And your approach, as I've already said, you were really gentle and safe. That's the best way I can say it, and kind of welcoming. And what you brought into it was this sense of abundance. What do I mean by that? Like, rather than looking at all the bad things about drinking and all the negativity you want to eject from your life, what you did was made me look at all the positive things that can be gained from not drinking. So it wasn't a case of giving something up. It was a case of opening up your life and welcoming good things in. And, it sounds a bit woo-woo to say it, but to welcome in better vibrations and more kind of more positive energy into life. So, looking at the fact that you have more time, that your brain becomes clear, that you get that lovely pink cloud around sort of a few weeks in, just welcoming all that new stuff in. So not looking at the negative, but welcoming in the positive. And that was a real revelation to me. And I hadn't expected that. And then when we chatted, we were talking 2 times a week. So that was really good too, because I had 2 anchor points in the week. And as I say, because of my own personality, I wasn't sharing much with other people, but it was a time when we could talk about the challenges, of which there were some, make plans as to how I was going to navigate those challenges, and I could talk through what I thought was the right thing, and you could sort of realign some of my crazier thoughts, and that was really helpful. And I think just being not accountable, because I say by the time I'd come to you, I'd made the decision I was going to stop drinking, so it wasn't like I needed you to keep me on that path, but it gave me this safe space to kind of practice conversations, to practice like how I was going to tell people that I'd stopped, what was my sort of line going to be, because no one wants the whole of this podcast delivered to them when they say, oh, do you not want a gin and tonic? They don't want your whole life story. So how to kind of navigate that kind of thing. And I think also to celebrate the successes. I think I'm quite hard on myself, and if I don't do everything exactly 100% perfect, then I tend to think of it as a bit of a failure. Whereas you were able to say, no, but you did this, and that was fantastic. And I got to stop and say, well, actually, I did do that. And it is okay that I'm feeling pleased with myself. So you really encouraged me to celebrate the successes, which I think without you, they would have just passed by unnoticed, and I wouldn't have realized that I was making progress. So I think the coaching style that you do that really worked for me was just this sort of increase in abundance and positivity, and it's been life-changing, and actually also changed how I see life generally, not just about being alcohol free, but being more ready to be happy about what am I trying to say, to be proud of my successes, I suppose, when normally I tend to be a bit down on myself. And you know, you talk about gratitude, and I know it's a real kind of like buzzword at the moment, but really to bring gratitude into your life, and that has stuck with me, even though you know, we've not been doing one-on-one coaching for a while now. Those things that I learned with you, I'm still using now in a wider context.
Yeah. Oh, that's so lovely to hear. And yeah, I think it's important that we do celebrate ourselves often, celebrate every moment, every achievement, because as you said, we're so good at beating ourselves up and focusing on the negative. You know, that's not to say that if things like that need talking about, then, you know, we'll talk about it. But as you rightly said, I don't think we should focus on them, because kind of that was then, and we did the best we could, I suppose, with what we had at the time. But this is, as you said, a new chapter, a new kind of way of life, and things to look forward to, even with everything that's going on in the world. And as we are chatting now, we've just had, you know, quite a lot of bad things being happening in the world. But even then, you know, I do think gratitude and seeing the positive in everything does make a massive difference on this journey.
It does. And I think that thing about the shift in mindset, that stopping drinking is not about giving up drinking. You're not giving up anything. You're welcoming a whole load of better things into your life by removing this thing that sort of lowers your energy. So I think that's probably the fundamental shift for me that's made this, I hope, has made this stick. You know, I'm 6 months in. I don't have any desire to drink again. This for me is for the rest of my life. But I would never want to be smug or complacent, because you never know. I was listening to a podcast this morning, actually. It was actually about sports, but this guy had previously been an alcoholic, like a proper down and out alcoholic on the park bench type thing. And he spent 13 years then running ultra marathons as his new addiction. And then he didn't achieve his PB. And 13 years later, he found himself in a pub drinking. And he was like, what is going on? And I thought, never be complacent. However, at the moment, I think that change in mindset about not giving something up, but welcoming other things in. So when people say, oh, don't you miss it? No, I don't, because what's to miss? Hangovers and feeling crap at 3 a.m. in the morning and feeling like you've let yourself down. I don't miss that at all. And it's really weird, actually. At the beginning, I started having drinking dreams where I would wake up having dreams that I'd got drunk, and then they were really useful, because I'd wake up with that awful feeling of sickness that I'd got drunk, and it reminded me about how I don't want to feel. But in the last few weeks, it's been really strange. I've been having these dreams about not drinking. And so I've been in a situation where people have offered me drinks and I've been like, oh no, I don't drink. And I had a dream. I won't bore everyone too much with the long details of this dream because other people's dreams are always really boring. But I basically met an old school friend who I hadn't seen for 30 years. And she was sat behind me at the dinner table and I chatted to her. We had a lovely time. And in my dream, the next morning I woke up and thought, as in my dream I woke up, I thought, isn't it great that I don't drink anymore? Because if I'd met her and I'd been drinking, I wouldn't have remembered that I'd met her and we wouldn't have had a lovely evening. So then when I actually in real life woke up, I thought, I hope this is my subconscious finally catching up and it's on board with the idea that this is a great idea, that life is better without booze.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think that is a good point to make, actually. Sometimes we do have to kind of not force ourselves, but make a conscious effort to look for the gratitude, to look for the joy, to really, you know, find evidence, I suppose, that actually not drinking is the best thing for me. And I can really have such a good time without the alcohol. It does take effort and it has to be your focus in the beginning. But then it's like any habit, really, isn't it? The more you do it, the more you repeat it, the easier it becomes.
Easier it gets.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And let's face it, it's far better and nicer to focus on the lovely and the joy and the gratitude and the positive, as opposed to beating yourself up about how crap things were in the past and what you didn't achieve because you were drinking and all of that. And then, you know, all of this practice and repetition, your subconscious and your head will catch up with your heart. So it just becomes, you know, this is who I am now. I'm a person who doesn't drink, and it's great.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that I realized too, again, from reading books and talking to you, that everyone says it's just practice. You're learning how to be in a new way. I guess, you know, ever since we were sort of 18 years old, being British, you're taught that going out involves drinking. So it's not surprising that you feel awkward and anxious and weird when you go out and you don't drink. You have to learn how to be in a social situation again. And I'm still learning that. But what I'm learning is it's not as bad as I thought it was. And actually, I think it's better. And it's so lovely to be able to drive home at the end of the evening, you know, and get into bed and again wake up. So brilliant not having a hangover. Being drunk is not worth the feeling of a hangover for me.
No, definitely not.
I think the other thing that was really great about coaching with you is having had coaches in sports and stuff in other areas of life, which I guess is a bit different, but there's always that slight anxiety about what happens at the end of the process, you know, the breakup, because the person becomes such a huge part of your life. If you're like me and you're a real people pleaser, you worry about breaking up with them at the end. And you made that so like a natural process. As you said to me, I'm not here to talk to you twice a week for the next 30 years, unless you want me to, in which case I'd be delighted to. But you never made me feel guilty about being ready to step out on my own.
No.
So that was really good as well, that, you know, you made it clear that my job is to help you while you need it, and then you can kind of spread your wings by yourself. So I was grateful for that too. And the fact that we've remained friends since has been lovely.
I know. And that is the whole point of what I do, because, you know, I don't want you to have to need me forever. That's, you know, not the point of this. I think we said that earlier on as well. The point is to be comfortable and confident in the new you, if you like, so that you can go out and do everything that you want to do without alcohol. I mean, some people do need an extra month, but that's absolutely fine. But other people like you are like, you know, this is it. I'm free. I'm ready. And off I go, which is so lovely to see. And I'm so pleased that we've kept in touch as well. And about, you know, all of the other things that you've done since we've broken up, if you like, because you've been back to that holiday destination, haven't you?
I have.
And what was that like compared to?
It was like sliding doors. So we went to the same place because it's near where we live, and the first, when we went before, it was like all inclusive. So the fridge was stocked with beer and, you know, wine and whatnot. And as I say, I decided I would drink as much as I wanted to. So this time it was weird because the room was the same. We stayed in the same kind of accommodation, and it was stocked with wine. Because obviously they're hoping that you might drink it at vast expense, because we didn't go all inclusive this time. Because as I say, my husband only drinks like one beer a day, so we weren't going to pay the price. It's like $160 a day or something ridiculous. I said, you're going to have to drink a lot of beer if we go to all inclusive. He's like, no, it's fine. It was just lovely. We had, last time I wanted to walk around the island and I never did it because it was too much effort, and it was too hot by the time I woke up, and then 4 o'clock comes and it's time to have a drink, so you don't bother. So I walked around the island every day. We were out snorkeling. Yeah, it was lovely, and up early enough to see the sun rising occasionally. Just and then actually, do you know what was really lovely in the evening time? The stars were beautiful, and so we sat out the back of our room just looking at the stars. Well, last time we were there, I didn't sit outside the back of the room staring at the stars. I just passed out in the bed. So again, that whole thing of just living every moment of the day and really appreciating all the beauty, which I didn't get to see at either end of the day because I was either hungover or pissed again. That was great. And that was so 5.5-ish months not drinking. And so, going for dinner and stuff was kind of normal. And I'm really lucky. Again, another thing I'm grateful for is that my husband doesn't drink very much. So it doesn't matter to him whether I drink or I don't drink. It's not part of our, relationship structure, which I know I'm really lucky for, because a lot of people don't have that. But again, going for dinner was just lovely. Chatting with other people was lovely. You do become aware of how much other people drink, and actually also how much other people don't drink. Because like if I was in a social group, I'd constantly be obsessing about whether it was time to order another round and why don't they hurry up and drink a bit quicker so that I can go to the bar and buy everyone a drink. So the sort of ubiquitous nature of alcohol is interesting, that everyone is, sharing wine at lunchtime and all that. But equally, watching people, they might have the wine in front of them, but they're sipping it. Whereas I think we laughed about this before. I was a real gulper. I'm like 3 gulps and the wine's gone, right? Where's the next? Other people have much more decorum than I used to. So they're probably those annoying moderators who have it all under control. But yeah, no, it was an interesting thing to go back. And given the comparison of the 2 holidays, which one would I do again? I'd do the alcohol-free one again every time.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
And not getting, the other thing about not traveling with a hangover, because I'm not sure whether you were the same when you were drinking. The last night of a holiday, well, there's no reason not to get pissed, because all you have to do tomorrow is get on the plane and go home. And the number of horrendous plane journeys where you feel so wretched. It's so nice to feel refreshed and not exhausted from your holiday, and then go back to work feeling like you've actually had a break.
Yeah Instead of kind of needing another holiday to recover from the holiday that you've just had.
Exactly.
Oh, Kate, just before we go, I've got a couple more questions for you. I could talk to you all day. So one of the questions was, now obviously you are in a different place now compared to when we first chatted, but what tools do you think that you've learned along the way are ones that you'll take with you to help you maintain, what it is that you want out of your life?
Yeah. I think number one is make the decision once and just make it. But the caveat to that is I'm aware you have to have made the journey to get to the point where the decision, and I, spent years cycling round and around and around, but I think I just knew I feel now that if I go back to drinking, I will just be at this point again in another few years' time. And I'm just sick of cycling round and around. Yeah. So make the decision. And you've got a lovely quote on your website from someone sporty. I made the decision and then I never questioned.
Michael Jordan, once I made the decision, I never thought about it again.
Yes, exactly that. So that's my first best tool, I think. And then my second is play the tape forward. So when you think about that drink, think about what that drink then opens the door to, which is the next drink and the next drink. So which kind of links with the third best tool, is dismantle the fantasies you have about drinking. Because if you're constantly thinking back to, you know, lovely sunny days in the beer garden with your friends, that's not a helpful image to have in your head. And it's not true. Yes, the first drink probably was lovely, but again, you play the tape forward, it leads to the others, and then it takes you 2.5 years later back to where you started, just, you know, wanting to drink but hating it whilst you're doing it. And that's an awful place to be stuck. That the only time you enjoy drinking is when you're about to do it for the first time that day. And then the minute that drink goes to your lips, you're back in that cycle of, why are you doing this? You know where this is going to lead. You're useless. I hate myself. Why can't you control this? Oh, just so blissful to not have that. Yeah, so I would say make the decision, play the tape forward, and dismantle the fantasies you have about drinking. Those would be my best tools for myself. And focus on the positives. Number 4, be grateful for the other things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose if people are listening to this and they're thinking, gosh, you know, I could really do with some help, but I'm unsure about reaching out for help. And I don't know if, you know, coaching is the way forward, because there are so many kind of free resources out there and free groups and all the rest of it, which are amazing. But sometimes people need a little bit more. So what would you say, kind of how the coaching helped you in a way that joining a free group might not have done? Like, what is the value in
I think because I did a bit of a scattergun approach when I got back from that fateful holiday. So I also signed up with Tempest, which is Holly Whitaker wrote a book called Quit Like a Woman, which I really recommend. I thought it was brilliant. But the trouble with being one anonymous voice amongst a lot of voices, like, I promised myself I would show up to those groups, and I didn't, because life is busy and we have so many things pulling on our time. And again, this like 1 year no beer, I've been through all of them. I signed up for that as well. But that's, I don't know, it's great, don't get me wrong, and I appreciate it. Every day they send you a little video link, and it's all very well done, but it's a bit more laddish, and it's a bit more like Couch to 5K, and it's like, yeah, I've just entered an Ironman. I don't need you to tell me to get off the sofa and run for 2 minutes today. It wasn't quite right. I think what one-on-one coaching offers is a personal approach and someone who is there to listen to you. And whilst it feels quite indulgent, and I did dilemma about whether I was, I suppose, spending money that I shouldn't spend because I should be able to do this by myself, all those awful should words. A friend of mine who's American actually said, for God's sake, Kate, if it's helping you, just pay the bloody money and accept the woman's help. And, you know, that was the most valuable bit of advice, because it's that personalized thing, and that you feel so vulnerable when you're opening up about all this kind of stuff, that to have someone who cares about you, not you in a Facebook group or you on a platform of 100 other people. Because although I think a lot of our experiences are shared, actually the sort of nuances of your own personal situation are different. And I think for, you know, the fact that you're on the end of a text message at any time, it's just that personal touch. It makes you feel held, for want of a better word, and give you the confidence and the ability to open up and be vulnerable to one person who you build a relationship with, rather than having an anonymous group of strangers who kind of keep you buoyed up with pithy sayings but really perhaps don't understand. But I think it's probably individual. For me, I found it very difficult to kind of put myself out there in the public space. But once I started talking to you, it was very easy to be open and honest. So I think it's a really valuable thing. And I would encourage people to do it, because the worst case scenario is it doesn't work for you, and then you don't have to continue. You can always stop.
Yeah. And I think it's important as well to kind of, and you touched on that, about feeling indulgent.
Yeah.
In the whole scheme of things, you know, the amount of money that we spend on alcohol without a second thought is probably, you know, even if you do this for 6 months or a year, then you will recoup that money back quite
Yeah, well, it's
easily
funny. I did that
do it.
thought experiment actually when we
Did
were
you?
coming up to re-sign, because I think I signed with you for a month, didn't I? And that's when I had the conversation with my friend towards the end of that month. She was one of the few people I'd confided in. And then she's like, just how much do you spend on alcohol? And I sort of did a mental calculation. And she's like, just imagine if this woman helps you to stop for the rest of your life, like you'll be paid that back thousands of times over. And her being American, she said, you Brits, she said, we should all be in therapy. Just pay your money and get your therapy, Kate. And as I say, it's money well spent, because you'll recoup it back. And again, the skills I've learned with you are not just related to being alcohol free. They can be put out into all areas of my life. So yeah, it's the best money I've ever spent, Gail. I pay double with that.
Yeah, but I think it kind of shows us that actually we are worth this indulgence, if you like, because so often, I don't know, as women especially, we kind of put ourselves at the bottom of the list.
We do.
For Christmas I bought myself 3 books and I was like, oh my god, 3 books, that's outrageous. But actually, I do deserve to treat myself, and if I want 3 books, or if I want to spend money on improving my life, changing my life, then surely I'm worth it. So I think just making the decision that I'm going to invest in myself sends us a very important message that's often overlooked.
Yes, I agree. And I think at the time when we're making that decision, it's a time when we actually feel that we're not of value, because you're in the midst of that self-loathing, shame, and all that cycle. So it's quite a hard time to be able to step back and say, no, I do need support and it's worth me paying for it. Like now, 6 months later, when I said to you a few months ago, I feel like you've replaced all the dark rain clouds in my head with rainbows and fairies and unicorns. It really, really does. And that was after the pink cloud had gone as well. But I think it's easy for me now to see that it was money well spent. But at the time, you're in this kind of like, I don't deserve this. I should do this, and I should be able to do that, and I should be able to be in control. Well, the point is you're not. So just pay the money and take the help, because it's worth it.
Yeah, the help is so important. So what's next for Kate then?
Well, that's a great question. So in May, I'm having a career change, I hope. So I'm really excited about that. It probably won't be a permanent career change, but just a career break. I think that would be the best way to say it. So I'm hoping to go off to culinary school and learn to be a chef. So I might be back in touch with you then in the coaching platform, because it's a school of food and wine, and I haven't quite decided how I'm going to navigate that. I was reading on their website, I believe you can actually do the certification without actually having to drink the wine. So we'll talk about that nearer the time, Gail. And I'm thinking, and this is the first sort of step on that process, to be a bit brave and speak out. As I said right at the beginning, I think there's a lot of people like me in the medical profession who, that term grey area drinkers, who don't have dependence problems, they're not alcoholics, but they are not comfortable with the way that they drink. They fall into that grey area drinking where life could be better without it. And I feel, and I'm a bit nervous to even vocalize this, because you tend to do the things that you say you might do, but I might be brave enough to start speaking out about it within my own profession, because in anesthesia there's a lot of stuff around wellness because of the stressful nature of the job, the sort of antisocial hours that we work. So wellness is quite a well-developed area, but we still don't talk about booze. It's kind of glossed over. It's all talked about in positive terms of winding down at the end of the week. So perhaps if I'm braver than I'm feeling quite at the moment, I might sort of try and open that conversation within our profession and see where that goes.
Wow. Okay, that's so exciting. It really is. Compared to kind of, and I know you feel a bit nervous and a bit scared about it, but you know what, it might just happen naturally because you are so happy with where you are now. You might find people just kind of notice that and ask you questions. So it could probably just evolve naturally on its own, which is such a good thing, because I do think the more conversations we have, the far better for everybody.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. I really feel strongly that I don't think people should feel on their own or feel like they're in their own kind of craziness in their heads, because I think so many of us feel that way. We just don't like to talk about it because we don't want to be vulnerable or lose face, really.
Yeah. Oh, well, keep me posted. Let me know.
Well, for sure.
How everything goes. And just, I suppose, one piece of final advice, I suppose, if anybody's listening to this and they're in that kind of situation where you were, like, what shall I do? What advice would you give to that person who doesn't really know where to go next? I
think I would, if they haven't read This Naked Mind by Annie Grace, I would read that. It's a life-changing book, and works on the basis of reprogramming your subconscious, because I think you have to believe that you're not giving something up to make this stick, so that you don't live a life of constant deprivation, because that's miserable and no one wants to do that. And then I think just, if you're in that moderation cycle, stop asking the question, am I an alcoholic? Because it's not helpful. And I can only speak from my own experience, so it's not like I can tell anyone else what to do. But if you're questioning moderation, a million people before you would tell you it doesn't work. Just fast forward to the end of the merry-go-round and stop trying to moderate and just give up, because life is so much better on the other side, so much better. There's that thing in Claire Pooley's book about the rabbit field. I'm not going to tell the story well, but basically, there's a rabbit and they know that there's a beautiful field on the other side. They just have to get over the obstacle course, and they keep falling at the obstacles and ending up stuck. And the rabbits on the other side are saying it's brilliant. Well, it really is brilliant over here in this field, and it's worth the few weeks or months of obstacle climbing to get to this field. So I would say just stop trying to moderate. It's a crazy, endless cycle of failure, and reach out for the help that is available on the internet now. Read books, listen to podcasts, realize you're not on your own. And if other people can do it, then you can do it too, for sure. Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Kate. Thank you so much. Really enjoyed this.
Thank you. And thank you, Gail, for the last 6 months. Honestly, you've literally changed my life. Thank you.
Bless you. Thank you. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, then please share and subscribe. For more help and support, go to the Sober Bliss website, soberbliss.com. Connect with me on social media and learn how I can help you quit drinking and start living.